You don't have what it takes to run a business, little brother. My name is Brandon Kessler. For 15 years, I've been the backbone of Skirich Hotels, our family's boutique chain. At 42, I wasn't chasing corner offices or fancy titles. I just made sure our 8 properties across the Northeast ran smoothly, that our staff felt valued, and that our guests kept coming back. Across the desk, my sister Danielle stood with her arms crossed. She had been president of Skirich for exactly 11 days, ever since our father stepped into the chairman role. And her first executive decision, getting rid of me. The board agrees we need fresh perspectives, she said coolly, watching as I emptied my desk drawer. We've hired a consultant from Marriott to take over your responsibilities. I kept my face neutral, nodding. The board, of course, was her, our father, and 2 of her business school friends she'd appointed just last week. Danielle had always been the face of the company, charming investors, giving speeches at industry conferences, and collecting the credit for our growth. Meanwhile, I was the one negotiating with suppliers, managing renovations, and building relationships with our staff. The unglamorous work that actually kept us profitable. You'll get 6 months severance, she added, glancing at her watch. Human Resources has the paperwork ready. I carefully placed my family photos into a box, making sure nothing cracked. The last thing I packed was a framed picture of our grandfather standing proudly in front of our very first hotel in Burlington, the one Danielle had never bothered to display in her office. Nothing to say, she pressed, her blazer and manicure immaculate, not a hair out of place. I gave her a sarcastic smile. Good luck with the Westbrook renovation. Her eyes flickered with a flash of panic. Westbrook was our largest property, and its renovation was already behind schedule and over budget. A problem she would now have to solve without me. We'll manage just fine, she snapped back quickly. My consultant has turned around properties twice that size. I just nodded, picked up my box, and walked out. 15 years of work dismissed in 15 minutes. I nodded again, picked up my box, and walked out without another word. 15 years of work dismissed in a 15-minute meeting. What Danielle didn't know, or maybe had forgotten in her rush for control, was that 5 years ago, our father had given me advice that changed everything. Never put all your eggs in one basket, Brandon, he told me. The hotel business is in our blood, but land is where the real value lies. I had taken his words to heart. While Danielle chased titles, photo ops, and glossy press clippings, I quietly made moves of my own. So as I drove away from our Boston headquarters that afternoon, I wasn't worried. I was patient. And patience, I knew, would pay off, especially when the lease renewals came due in just 3 months. I'd grown up watching my father build Skirich hotels from a single struggling property in Burlington, Vermont, into a respected regional chain. Danielle had always been at his side during investor meetings and industry events. Me? I preferred following the maintenance staff through back hallways, learning how the buildings really worked. By 16, I could troubleshoot a broken HVAC system, negotiate with linen suppliers, or patch a plumbing line as well as anyone on payroll. Your sister sees the big picture, my father used to say, not unkindly. You see the details that make it possible. It was a balance that worked until it didn't. As our father aged, Danielle's ambition grew. She brought in consultants who produced glossy reports about restructuring and spoke constantly about national expansion, celebrity partnerships, and lifestyle branding. Sometimes, I wondered if she even remembered that our real business was simply giving people a comfortable place to sleep. 5 years ago, when my father first mentioned stepping back, I saw the writing on the wall. During a routine review of our finances, I noticed something troubling. Our 3 most profitable properties, Burlington, Portland, and Westbrook, were all operating on land we leased, not owned. Those leases had been signed decades earlier, with elderly owners who are now gone. Their heirs were eager to sell. It's a vulnerability, I told my father over lunch at his favorite steakhouse. If someone buys that land and raises our rates, we're trapped. He nodded, swirling his glass of wine. I've been meaning to address that, but with the new Providence property eating all our capital, I could buy them, I said carefully, personally, then lease them back to Skirich at the same rates. My father studied me over the rim of his glasses, quiet for a long moment. That would require significant personal investment, Brandon. I've been saving, I said simply, and I believe in our company. The next day, he introduced me to our bank. 3 months later, I owned the land beneath our 3 flagship hotels. Skirich was now my tenant, bound to a 5-year preferential lease that would need renewal. Does Danielle know about this arrangement? My father had asked as we signed the papers. It's all in the corporate documents, I'd replied. But she doesn't read those unless she has to. He chuckled. Your sister sees the forest. You see the trees. Someday she'll understand how important that is. Now, driving home from my last day at Skirich, I wondered if that day had finally arrived. The signs had been there for a year. Danielle cutting me out of strategy meetings, rejecting budget requests without explanation, reassigning my best people. My removal had been inevitable. The next morning, I woke at the same time as always, 5:30 a.m. For 15 years, I had started each day by reviewing overnight reports, putting out fires before anyone else even noticed the smoke. But that morning, my phone stayed silent. No crises, no calls, just nothing. I brewed coffee and sat on my back porch overlooking Boston Harbor. Container ships slid across the water, deliberate and unhurried. I'd always admired them. No wasted motion, no need for recognition, just steady, relentless purpose. My phone buzzed. A text from Miguel, head of maintenance at Westbrook. Heard what happened? They're lost, man. New consultant already cutting corners on the renovation. Not good. I typed a simple reply. Thanks. No advice, no instructions. Not my problem anymore. Then another buzz. This one from my father. Breakfast at Rosie's. 8 o'clock. Rosie's was the diner 2 blocks from our first office. We hadn't eaten there in years. He was already in a corner booth when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. As I slid into the seat, he spoke without preamble. She told me after the fact. I would have handled it differently. But you didn't stop it, I said. Not a question. He sighed, stirring his coffee. Danielle thinks Skirich needs to evolve. Become more corporate, less family-style management. And you agree? He hesitated. I think your sister has a vision the board finds compelling. The waitress delivered our old orders without asking. Black coffee and blueberry pancakes for him, eggs and toast for me. Some things never changed. The land, he said after she left. Danielle doesn't fully understand the lease agreements. I cut into my eggs with precision. The corporate documents explain everything. You know she doesn't read the fine print. He gave me a pointed look. The renewal comes up soon. 3 months, I confirmed. I've already spoken with my lawyer. My father set his fork down. What are you planning, Brandon? The question hung in the air between us. For years, I had imagined this moment. The quiet, overlooked son holding leverage over the favored daughter. I had pictured vindication, satisfaction. Instead, all I felt was tired. Market rate leases, I said finally. Nothing more, nothing less. He nodded slowly. That will significantly impact operating costs. Yes, I said, meeting his gaze. It will. We finished our meal in silence. When we stepped outside, he put a hand on my shoulder. Your sister sees business as a game to win, my father said. You've always seen it as a foundation to build on. Don't forget that difference. I watched him walk away, his shoulders slightly stooped with age. For the first time, I saw clearly what had been in front of me all along. This wasn't just about Danielle underestimating me. It was about our father enabling the rift that had been growing for decades. Back in my home office, I stared at the frame plans for our first Burlington hotel, the one I'd purchased the land beneath. The message was clear. It was time to focus on foundations again. 2 weeks after my dismissal, Danielle finally called. I let go to voicemail. Her voice was clipped, professional. Brandon, we need to discuss the transition. Some files are missing. Call me back. No apology. No acknowledgement that she'd fired her brother after 15 years. Just business. I deleted the message and went about my day, meeting an old college friend who now worked in commercial real estate. The next morning, she showed up at my condo unannounced. Pushing past me, she made herself comfortable on my couch. You're ignoring me, she said. I'm respecting your decision to remove me from company business. I replied evenly, still standing. What files are you missing? I asked. Vendor contracts? Maintenance schedules? Westbrook's renovation plans? Her frown deepened. And financial documents. There's a gap in our lease information. Everything's on the shared drive, I told her. Organized by property and department, just like always. Well, your system isn't exactly intuitive, she snapped, her designer heel bouncing with irritation. Your replacement needs context. I poured myself a coffee, not bothering to offer her one. My replacement is a hospitality consultant who's turned around properties twice our size. I'm sure he can figure it out. Her eyes narrowed at hearing her own words echoed back at her. This isn't helpful, Brandon. The company needs. I don't work for the company anymore. I cut her off. Remember? She stood, smoothing her skirt. Fine. Legal will request the documents formally. Do what you need to do. I opened the door. Conversation over. A week later, I received a certified letter from Skirich's lawyer demanding all company-related documents. I forwarded it to my attorney, who replied with a detailed list of everything already stored on company servers, along with a reminder that my personal notes were private property. Meanwhile, calls began pouring in from former colleagues. The new consultant was slashing staff hours, deferring maintenance, replacing longtime suppliers with cheap alternatives. Morale was collapsing. Guests were starting to notice. Instead of satisfaction, I felt an ache of guilt. These were people I'd worked with for years, some I'd personally hired. Their livelihoods were being chipped away by Danielle's vision and my absence. Then came the email from our insurance provider requesting clarification about recent ownership changes for 3 flagship hotels. Apparently, Danielle had tried to update the policies and stumbled onto the truth. The company didn't own the land beneath its crown jewels. I did. I forwarded the email to my lawyer without comment. The next morning, my father called. Did you know? His voice was tight. That Danielle doesn't read legal documents? Yes. A heavy sigh. She's called an emergency board meeting. Claims you've hidden critical information from the company. Nothing was hidden, I said calmly. Every lease agreement is documented. The company has been paying me rent for 5 years. Paying you? He sounded genuinely stunned. Through BK Holdings, I explained. BK? Danielle thought that was a management company, he muttered. BK, Brandon Kessler Holdings, I said simply. She'd been signing off on financials for years without realizing she was authorizing payments directly to me. The board meeting is tomorrow, he said. You should be there. I'm not on the board anymore. Brandon, his voice softened. This is still our family business. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, turning my grandfather's old brass hotel key between my fingers. The key to the very first Skirich property. Family business, indeed. But families were supposed to protect each other. An hour later, my attorney called. Skirich wants clarification on lease renewals. How do you want to respond? I didn't hesitate. Send them the new terms. Market rate. No special considerations. The next morning, I sat in my car across from the Westbrook Hotel, watching guests file in through its revolving doors. The 8-story building gleamed in the early light off Casco Bay. I'd poured myself into this place, transforming it from a tired motor lodge into a landmark. Now, it stood at the center of a storm my sister never saw coming to my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, my lawyer. They've received the new lease terms. Expecting a response today. I'd anticipated their shock. For 5 years, Skirich had benefited from the below-market rates I'd set, saving the company nearly $2 million annually across the 3 properties. Those days were over. The new terms stripped away every advantage. As I sat watching from across the street, a familiar silver Mercedes pulled into the reserved spot. Danielle. She wasn't supposed to be in Portland today. I slouched lower in my seat, watching her stride inside. Phone pressed her ear, gesturing sharply as she spoke. Curiosity got the better of me. I dialed Miguel. Your sister's on the warpath, he answered without preamble. Emergency inspection. She brought the new consultant too. What are they looking for? I asked. Property documents, blueprints. Said something about a structural assessment. His voice dropped. Between us, I think they're trying to find a way to challenge your ownership claim. After thanking him, I drove straight to the Portland Public Records office. With my laptop, I pulled up the original deed transfers, property surveys, and lease agreements. Everything was airtight, legal, documented, unshakable. Exactly as I'd expected. What I didn't expect was what I found buried in the adjacent county records. A permit application filed 2 years ago under Danielle's married name. A development permit for a large-scale commercial project on undeveloped oceanfront land just outside Portland city limits. I checked the entity, Kessler Vision, LLC. Not Skirich, not family-owned. A separate company, entirely hers. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Similar permits have been filed in Burlington and near Westbrook, all under the same LLC. All for competing hotels. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. Danielle hadn't fired me because she thought I was unfit. She fired me because I was standing in the way of her true ambitions. I immediately called Patricia. I need you to investigate a company called Kessler Vision, LLC, I said. 2 days later, we had the full picture. Danielle had been quietly building her own luxury hotel brand for nearly 3 years, courting investors and leveraging her position at Skirich to fund it. Her business plan, which Patricia obtained through a contact, was blunt. Capitalize on Skirich's reputation and clientele, then directly compete in the same markets as its most profitable properties. The morning of the emergency board meeting, my phone rang. The caller ID surprised me. Vincent Ross, one of Danielle's closest friends from business school, and a longtime board member. I've seen the lease renewal terms, he spoke without preamble. I've also heard rumors about Kessler Vision. Not just rumors, I replied. A long pause followed. I respected your father. That's why I joined this board. Another pause, heavier this time. Danielle assured us you were stepping away voluntarily, that you wanted to explore other opportunities. Did she mention her own other opportunities? I asked. A heavy sigh crackled over the line. No, that's why I'm calling. I heard papers shuffling in the background. The board meeting is at 2. Danielle plans to propose that Skirich sell the Westbrook, Burlington, and Portland properties. She claims your new lease terms make them unprofitable. The final piece clicked into place. Danielle wasn't just maneuvering against me. She was orchestrating a fire sale, positioning her new company to buy the buildings at distressed prices. I would remain the landlord, yes, but her venture would become my tenant. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. I didn't tell you anything, Vincent replied before hanging up. I sat in silence, cold rage spreading through me. This wasn't business anymore. This was betrayal, calculated, ruthless, and far deeper than I had imagined. Instead of attending the board meeting, I booked a flight to New York. The next morning, I sat across from Julian Hayes, CEO of Commonwealth Hotels. His corner office overlooked Central Park, a view I couldn't help but notice as we settled in. Interesting timing, Julian remarked. I hear Skirich is considering divesting a few properties. News traveled fast in the hospitality world. 3 properties, I confirmed. And you happen to own the land beneath them, he said, leaning forward. I nodded, a detail my sister underestimated, until recently. Julian's smile was pure business. So, what exactly are you proposing, Brandon? A partnership, I said, sliding a folder across his desk. When Skirich sells, Commonwealth acquires the buildings. I keep the land, but offer you favorable lease terms. As Julian reviewed the documents, I gazed out at the view. 15 years at Skirich, and I'd never had an office like this. Danielle had always claimed the best spaces for herself, insisting she needed them for clients, for appearances, always the face of the company. These properties fit our expansion strategy, Julian said finally. But tell me something, why not just raise the rent and force your sister to keep operating? You make more money. Because she's already planning her own competing chain, I explained. She wants to devalue these hotels, force Skirich to sell, then acquire them through her new venture at a discount. Julian raised his brows. Ambitious, and all while still running Skirich. That's one word for it, I said flatly. He gave a low chuckle. Awkward. I prefer to choose my business partners more carefully. Commonwealth has a reputation for retaining staff during acquisitions, I countered. That matters to me. Julian studied me for a long moment. Family businesses are complicated. This isn't about family anymore, I said. It's about protecting the people who built these hotels. 2 days later, Commonwealth's legal team began drafting acquisition proposals. Meanwhile, I quietly reached out to Miguel and other trusted staff at the 3 properties, assuring them their positions would be secure no matter what came next. But the news broke sooner than expected. A hospitality blog published speculation about Skirich's financial troubles and Commonwealth's interest in its prime locations. Danielle's response was immediate. A company-wide email denying any plans to sell, reaffirming Skirich's strong market position. That evening, my father called. His voice was weary. The board rejected her proposal to sell. Good, I said simply. She's furious. Says you're undermining the company. He hesitated, then added, she found out about your meetings with Commonwealth. I said nothing. Brandon, he sighed. What are you trying to accomplish here? The question lingered, heavier than he knew. Revenge? Justice? Or something deeper? A reckoning long overdue? I'm protecting what I built, I said finally. The same way you taught me. 3 weeks later, Skirich's quarterly report revealed declining revenue and rising costs. The stock fell 12% in a single day. That same afternoon, I received a formal request from the board, minus Danielle, for a meeting to discuss strategic alternatives for the struggling properties. Patricia, my lawyer, and Julian's team prepared every detail. When the day arrived, I stepped back into Skirich's conference room for the first time since my dismissal. Danielle sat at the head of the table, her face tight with barely restrained anger. Beside her, my father looked every bit his 70 years. The boardroom was tense, every seat filled, the members' expressions carefully neutral. I took my place at the opposite end of the long table, opened my portfolio, and waited. Danielle broke the silence first, her tone sharp. Let's be clear about what's happening here. My brother is attempting a hostile takeover of the company our father built. Incorrect, I replied evenly. I'm exercising my rights as the property owner. Commonwealth Hotels is simply interested in acquiring buildings that Sky Reach no longer wishes to maintain under the new lease terms. Vincent Ross cleared his throat. The board never approved selling those properties. The board, I said, sliding folders toward each member, was presented with misleading information. These documents show that while serving as president of Sky Reach, Danielle was simultaneously developing a competing hotel chain, one targeting the very same markets. The room went still. My father's face drained of color as he flipped through the folder. This is absurd, Danielle sputtered. Kessler Vision is a consulting firm, not a hotel developer. Then perhaps you can explain the permit applications in 3 cities where Sky Reach operates, I countered, along with this business plan, one that explicitly states its goal to leverage Sky Reach's expertise and clientele. My father turned to her, betrayal etched deep into his expression. Is this true? Her silence was all the answer anyone needed. I continued, steady and deliberate. Commonwealth's offer exceeds market value. It guarantees every current employee will stay and every customer commitment will be honored. That's more than Danielle's venture ever intended to do. You've been planning this for years, Danielle accused, her voice shaking. Buying the land, waiting to spring your trap. No, I said firmly. I bought the land to protect our family business. You're the one who decided I wasn't part of that family anymore. The board voted unanimously to accept Commonwealth's offer. Everyone except our father, who sat motionless, abstaining. As the meeting adjourned, Danielle stormed out, refusing to look at me. Vincent approached quietly. The board will be requesting Danielle's resignation tomorrow. We'll need interim leadership during restructuring. I shook my head. That won't be me. I've made other arrangements. A year later, I stood on the rooftop terrace of the former Westbrook Hotel, now the Harbor View, the jewel of Commonwealth's Northeast collection. Much of it remained the same. Miguel still ran maintenance. Most of the staff had stayed, and guests still marveled at the ocean views that made the property special. Julian joined me, handing over a quarterly report. Revenue's up 17% from last year. You were right about the local market. I nodded. As consulting director for Commonwealth's regional properties, I spent my days negotiating with suppliers, mentoring staff, ensuring standards. No corner office, no power suits, no boardroom politics, just the work itself, which was all I'd ever really wanted. Julian asked gently, "Have you seen your father?" "Monthly dinners," I replied. "He's adjusting to retirement." After Danielle's ousting, he stepped away from Sky Reach entirely. The company still operated 5 properties, though none as successful as those Commonwealth acquired. "And your sister?" "Kessler Vision filed for bankruptcy last month," I said without bitterness. Turns out building hotels requires more than ambition and a business degree. We stood in silence, watching boats cut across the harbor. Eventually, Julian left, and I lingered alone. My phone buzzed with a text from my father, "Dinner tonight. Bringing the grandkids." I smiled and replied yes. My niece and nephew weren't responsible for their mother's mistakes, and I'd made sure they never felt the fallout of our war. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and crimson, I looked once more at the harbor view. Not just the building, but the land beneath it, the foundation that made everything possible. In the end, that was what Danielle never understood. Success wasn't about titles or offices. It was about building something strong enough to withstand any storm. I turned from the view and headed downstairs. Time to prepare for dinner with family, the parts worth keeping.